I don't think we'll ever get to the 2024 election. I think things are going to implode in Washington before then. I think our economic financial condition is fragile. It's going to come home to roost in ugly ways. I will tell you, I don't know exactly how it will happen. I think we're going to end up in a situation where we find out the banks are closed for 2 or 3 weeks and nobody can get into them.
You think so?
I think we're going to run into something like that, yeah. I also think that the levels of violence and criminality in our cities is so high that it's going to spill over into other places in society. People that normally think they can live remote from the problem are now beginning to be touched by the problem. Then I look at this thing in Ukraine. I think Ukraine is going to lose catastrophically. It's going to be a complete collapse. And that, too, is going to have an effect here at home because people are going to say, well, wait a minute. Everybody told us Ukraine was winning. Everybody told us X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's sort of the Russian hoax on steroids. All of those things are going to come together or converge in some way that's going to prevent us from reaching, the status quo, another election, another set of campaigns, and so forth. So what you're saying, to me, is eminently plausible because I don't think Biden will make it through the year. I think he'll be gone. And I think everybody knows that this person, Kamala Harris, lacks the ability under any circumstances to be president of the United States.
When you say gone, you mean passing away because of his age or merely being incapable and finally being, what is that? What do they call it? 25th Amendment or whatever it is?
Shuffled off the stage. I think
they'll save face, though. They'll do it in a way to save face.
Exactly.
Sure.
I think
that's
what
you're
Patrick,
speaking of, right?
Yeah. I think what Patrick wrote is accurate. Something like that will happen. And then the search begins, and Newsom is the logical candidate for them. He's presiding over California, which is their poster child for the future of America. If you want to know what the Democrats want America to become, look at California. How deeply in debt is California? What's the state of affairs in that country of its own? It's a catastrophe. Everyone who can leave that has any talent, ability, or understanding is leaving. Businesses are leaving. No one wants to be there. So what are you going to end up with? A very small minority of very wealthy people and millions of poor people, most of whom don't even consider themselves to be Americans. So that's the dream world for the left, California.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll tolerate that. So I don't think it'll ever get that far on the national level. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think we're that complacent. I also know that you get revolutionary change when people can't eat, when the supply chains break down and you can't deliver food, when they can't afford to buy the food, when they can't afford to buy the gasoline. These things are the catalysts for real change. And everyone's betting that the left in charge in Washington can keep all of this going without any interruption. Maybe they're right. I don't think so.
A massive prediction was just made by an analyst for the upcoming presidential election, and it is terrifying. Thanks for watching Next News Network. I'm Ivory Hecker, filling in from my YouTube. All right, we all know that the amount of pushback the left is doing as far as conservatives taking control of the Senate and House, and with all of the craziness of the left freaking out about the possible loss of power, there are fears mounting about the 2024 election not being able to happen. We Love Trump reported analyst Martin Armstrong has warned that there may not be an election in 2024 and that, quote, the United States will not exist after 2032 due to massive societal upheaval and financial collapse. Armstrong, who correctly predicted numerous events, including the 2008 financial collapse, made the remarks during an interview with Greg Hunter. Let's see his comments. Watch.
But you don't think 2024, we might not even have an election in 2024? Is that what Socrates and you were saying?
It's not looking very good.
Wow.
And I think it's probably because this election is not going to be accepted. And when it's so over the top corrupt, what do you do for the next one?
Wow. And you can't even say, this I find very bizarre for a man of your intelligence and predictive skills, which you've been right a lot. You can't even, it's so corrupt, we can't even make a prediction?
No, look, the United States will not exist after 2032, and maybe after 2028 to 2029. We're going to have to start looking at how we redesign a government from scratch, because this is, this is being destroyed. All right, the republics always end in absolute corruption.
He's wrong. Well, the insanity from the left over the elections and the consequences from it are literally stunning. Town Hall reports in an interview with MSNBC Thursday afternoon, presidential historian Michael Beschloss claimed that Republican victories spell the end of democracy and the ability to record current events. His accusations then turned dark, including the arrests and murder of children if Republicans win. Watch.
And a historian 50 years from now, if historians are allowed to write in this country, and if there are still free publishing houses and a free press, which I'm not certain of, but if that is true, a historian will say what was at stake tonight and this week was the fact whether we will be a democracy in the future, whether our children will be arrested and conceivably killed. We're on the edge of a brutal authoritarian system, and it could be a week away.
Wow. Over on ABC's The View, legal analyst Sunny Hostin and she said that suburban white women supporting Republicans are, quote, like roaches supporting Raid. Watch.
Republicans, but what's also surprising to me is the abortion issue. I read a poll just yesterday that white Republican suburban women are now going to vote Republican.
Why?
It's almost like roaches voting for Raid, right?
I think
they're voting.
No, it's insulting to the voter.
They're voting against their own self-interest. Do they want to live in Gilead?
Okay, so do we love
in the hands?
Do we love democracy or not? Because just saying that it's insulting to the voter. People make up decisions on what's right for their family, and the idea that you should have a say.
Whichever way you look at it, we're living in historic times. It is the battle for the freedom of speech and the right to continue the legacy of American freedom. The history books will reflect one of two narratives depending on who wins this battle. One version will say that the freedoms of Americans were being crushed by the conservatives, and now that socialism has taken hold, everyone is more free and the environment is protected. The other version will say that America faced the greatest threat to the Constitution since the inception of this country. Patriots stood tall and we maintained our freedoms from the communist takeover. The version of history that is written is up to you. So I hope you went out and voted. Let's continue this conversation in the comments below. I'm Ivory Hecker, filling in for Next News Network. Thanks for watching.
All right. Good morning, Doug. Today, I want to talk about an article that you just published today in the International Man, which I'll include in the links below. Everyone, if you're not a subscriber to International Man, you definitely should be. There's lots of great content there, not only stuff that Doug writes, but other great writers as well. So, but you covered a topic that I've heard rumors about for months. First, I heard about it from some of our viewers, actually, and that's about this site called Deagle.com. And their forecast for population changes, massive population changes in 2025. And first of all, how did it get on your radar? How did this even topic get on your radar?
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that introduced me to this Deagle website. I'd never heard of Deagle before, but I did go on their website, and they're basically what they do is they track the economies of different countries in the world, about 200, most of them actually, almost all of them, but mainly their military capabilities. So they're in some ways competitive with Jane's, which has been around for decades and is the well-known company when it comes to tracking military weapons systems, what they can accomplish, how much they cost, all this type of thing. So it's, I guess Deagle's kind of a big deal, but it's not well promoted or well known like Jane's is. Can't remember.
Well, and they had they had this thing on their website that basically predicted population levels in virtually every country in the world in 2025. Now, this is no longer on their site. They took it off, and you can find it in the Internet Archive, and I'll try and include a link to it in the description to this video as well. But that's the part that kind of stuck out most to you and that you were addressing in the article in International Man.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. They list all the countries of the world and give their current population and current GDP, and then what they project as population and GDP in 2025. And this just isn't the usual draw a straight ruler from, 2% compounded or something. They project that the US population falls 50%, 70%, huge number like that. Same with Western Europe, same with Canada, and I think the same with Australia and New Zealand. I can't recall, I'm not looking at it now. But interestingly, it's only the Western world that suffers this huge population drop. All of the countries of the world, if you look at them on this, they all suffer significant population drops, but generally in the 5 to 10 to 15% area, not 50 to 70%, the way North America and Europe will. So their explanation as to why this may be, at least what they published on the site, was kind of general. There's a reference to, well, I imputed, they're looking at a biological war, which would obviously be the best way to take out huge numbers of people, but also there's a reference to a possible famine evidencing itself in the world.
Well, because we're talking about a decline in the U.S. of something like,
But not a conventional war.
I mean, the decline in the U.S. is something like a reduction of for 70% of the population. That'd be, like 200 million people, right? Something like that. I mean, it's a massive decline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is catastrophic. It would be the biggest thing in world history because it's not just North America. It's going to be Europe too. And, but they don't have any explanation. It would have been nice if they had an essay explaining, well, exactly how do you come up with these figures? Based on what? I mean, when I first saw this thing, I thought, well, this must be some type of a spoof or some type of a trolling exercise, because for an outfit that's moving in the circles that Deagle, whoever's in back of it, that's indeterminate. It's hard to tell. It's a spook organization. This is not going to like get them all kinds of new business or something like that. That would make no sense from a business point of view. And I haven't seen any comments on this in any of the conventional media at all, or for that matter, even in the alternative media, because nobody knows anything about Deagle. I wonder if Jane's had published this, if there would be massive comments from one place or another. Just don't know.
Were you able, and so you spent a lot of time researching this, trying to understand, really what they were trying to say, what it would take in order to even achieve these population changes, and what were you, I guess, when you kind of dug into it, what did you come up with? Like, how is it even possible that those population changes could occur?
Well, the only thing that makes sense to me is some type of a biological war, and of course I've said on this podcast and elsewhere in articles I've written in internationalman.com as well, that it seems to me that the US and China are slated for a real war. Not just a little sport war kind that we had with places like Grenada, or for that matter, Afghanistan or Syria, or Iraq, those are kind of sport wars where we're acting as a bully, but China would be hunting big game. What would it look like, and how would it start? Well, since the Chinese have been of late saying things and appearing to make preparations to take over Taiwan, and the US is pledged to defend Taiwan, maybe that'll start it. And that doesn't have to turn into World War III, even if the Chinese sink a couple of aircraft carriers. That would not necessarily start World War III. I mean, if we sank enough Chinese boats and so forth, maybe they just decide, let's call this off before it gets out of control. But on the other hand, it could thoroughly spin out of control. A nuclear war, Chinese are going to want to stay away from that because they'd lose at this point.
Well, and
nobody wins a nuclear war, obviously.
And the predicted population declines for China are not like at all what we have. So it's like if there were a nuclear war, you would have to assume that we would be able to deliver some serious punishment on their side too.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a believer that in addition to the computer/cyber element of World War III, which will be huge, obviously, you just shut down the country's infrastructure because everything runs on computers these days. In addition to the space war element of this, because everything's done by satellites these days, and who knows what type of weapons have already been mounted on the high frontier to attack enemy bases. And of course, you've got a nuclear war and a conventional war. But the thing that nobody's talking about is biological war, which coincides kind of oddly with this COVID hysteria. And there are so many advantages looking at it from a Dr. Strangelove point of view, the point of view of a marginally psychotic political leader or general, to biological war, especially when we're talking about China, because of course the Chinese, the Han Chinese, which are the vast majority of the population there, share lots of genetic characteristics. So it would be, easy, I would think, for people that know about these things to find the common denominator that makes Chinese people look like Chinese people. And it's not just skin color or the epicanthic fold around the eyes and things like that. Perhaps the bacteria that would insulate them and take out people that don't have those Chinese genes. It makes a lot of sense. And of course, from the looking at society, that'd be a little bit tougher, but you can breed a biological weapon directed at the Chinese, as opposed to a Chinese breeding one that they're insulated from. And of course, if you're going to launch a bio war, you can buy inoculation, protect your people, but the enemy is not inoculated. So that's another way of playing the game. Another advantage to a biological war is that you don't need all these high-priced delivery systems. Like if you start a nuclear war, people are going to know exactly where those missiles are coming from. But if it's a biological war, it could be a tourist, or it could be something in the mail, so that that you have plausible deniability, so that maybe you won't be counterattacked or counterattacked in time because you're just not sure who did it, quite frankly. And has access to a high school level chemistry lab and a CRISPR machine can alter DNA and genomes. And who knows what could be done at this point, because listen, all we really know about it, unless we're experts in the field, is what filters down through the mainstream press. We about it don't know what they're talking about anyway. So yeah, biological war is the way it's, and of course, a big advantage with bio-war is that all the materiel remains. It just takes out the so-called bad guys, whoever the bad guys are, depends on which side you're on. So, you know, you're not dealing with a smoking ruin, but, you know, all the good stuff that you want is still there. So I think, I don't think there's any doubt we're going to have a biological war when we have World War III. But anybody can start World War III. Like I said, anybody with some expertise and a chemistry lab could do it too. So this is the big thing that nobody talks about. And the interesting thing is this Deagle website, it doesn't put its finger on biological war exactly, but definitely puts that across as a possibility. So I think that's it in a nutshell, Matt.
Doesn't it's they say some things. They have this lengthy disclaimer at the bottom of their tables of population changes, and they say things like the Western world success model has been built over societies with no resilience that can barely withstand any hardship, even a low density intensity one. It was assumed, but we got the full confirmation beyond a doubt with COVID. And I don't know. I mean, it just seems the whole thing to me, and I think people should read the entire disclaimer that they have, because they're just basically they basically say the things that we've been talking about here for the last 114 episodes of this, that the U.S. is not in a great position to be able to withstand any difficulty. They talk about the financial situation. They talk about the dollar hegemony, but still the predictions are so utterly shocking that my worry when I saw this, a viewer actually brought this to my attention maybe 6 months ago. And I thought, I saw it and I go, holy crap, that's crazy. And then I just tried to dig around and find information on these guys. And that's where I ran into trouble. And so, the question is like, how seriously should we take any of these things that are coming out of this website?
Well, when I lived in Washington, D.C. Many years ago, one way or another, I had lots of contacts in the spook and military communities. And if this was then, I could make a number of phone calls and maybe get the inside skinny. But the guys that I knew in those days they've all joined the ranks of the departed one way or another, so that I don't really have any connections there anymore. I think one guy still working for the Rand Corporation. And I'll try to reach out to him and ask him, because of course, Rand Corporations, that's really the biggest thing in the whole area. I'd like to get to the bottom of this, because it's so outrageous what these people have published, but outrageous, but also credible. And, the fact is that the whole world now actually is highly urbanized. And the problem, there are many advantages to being urbanized. That's why we have the high standard of living that we do. But at the same time, if things are urbanized, it's all about supply chains. How long would you be able to survive in New York City if the trucks stopped running for like 2 or 3 days?
Yep.
There'd be no food, quite frankly. Yep. And then what happens? Okay. And that's true of every big city. And it really doesn't matter whether you're an office worker who's got no skills except for shuffling paper, or a ghetto rat who's got no skills except gangbanging or dealing drugs or whatever. All these people wouldn't be able to feed themselves, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. So, a highly complex civilization is one that is I think Nassim Taleb that went into this about they're not by nature anti-fragile. They're fragile. Yeah, it's all of the food in the US is either produced by the 2 or 3% of our population that works on farms, but these are gigantic monoculture farms, generally speaking. Is it possible
even they
that a
can't.
virus or a vaccine?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, even those farmers can't survive without the complex system because they require fertilizers and even food, their own food, like because they're just producing soybeans or corn or something like that themselves. Like they aren't actually producing the components that one would require to actually live. It requires, this complex economy in order for anybody to get the finished goods that we need for our basic survival.
Yes, and they need diesel fuel and gasoline to do any of this. I mean, even more basic. So there's all kinds of ways that the agricultural production line could be shut down. In addition, of course, the rest of the food is imported from abroad. So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong in a very complex society that's fragile. And it's especially fragile because of the influence of government, all kinds of stupid distortions that they've cranked into to the system. So maybe it would be mass starvation from, I mean, they're never really clear why this could happen.
Yeah, they're never clear. So we gotta. So I'll let me just explain real quickly that I do have one friend who is a former CIA who, was really connected to one of the most powerful people in intelligence services for a long time, and was probably more powerful after he left them, actually. And I just asked him about it. And so when I told him the website name, I just said, do you know anything about these guys? Who's behind it? I mean, are they credible at all? What information you can give me? His immediate response to it was, well, I have a classmate, or a friend of mine was a West Point classmate with Edwin Deagle, but he died in February, but his assumption was that this Edwin Deagle, that this was his, because Edwin Deagle was basically had worked, to keep track of this stuff while he was in, I believe, in the Air Force, and then he later worked for, was associated with the Rockefeller Foundation, but I don't know for sure if that's the same guy because the last name is spelled differently, just a bit. It's the E and the L in the end are reversed, but it's interesting that when I brought it up to him, this guy who, was in the CIA for a long time, West Point grad, that immediately he came up with Edwin Deagle. So I don't know if that's really it or not. I asked him to ask around. He has a lot of feelers out trying to get more information about it. He's hearing different things from different people, but I think it's worth. I'm going to keep poking myself to just see what I can find out about it, because it's the source is the question. Because if the source really is credible, was really utilized by the powers that be, then I think it's really, really important information. So, and I think it's worth reaching out to your friend at the RAND Corporation just to see if they would just dismiss it out of hand, or if they think there might be something to whoever's behind it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's especially in these strange times that we're living in, it's kind of wild and crazy, quite frankly, to see this.
Well, it's certainly the most outrageous prediction I've seen. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying it's certainly the most extreme prediction I've seen about our near future.
God forbid some newsletter copywriter sees this and decides it's a fantastic way to incite the mob to send in money to find out more.
Oh God! Now that you said it, it's going to happen. It's going to.
I know, because one of the strange things about life is that anything that can happen eventually will happen. It's just the law of large numbers.
Yeah.
So yeah, Anything that can be imagined can be done. And anything that can be done will be done. I mean, show me an example where that's not true.
Yeah, I don't have one. Well, let's, I'm on your end. I think it's worth both of us continuing to investigate this further. And if we get new information, then we, update our viewers on what we find out. And for our viewers out there, if you have any information on, this site, who's behind it specifically, and, how credible it all is, we'd love to hear whatever you've got to say about it. So, you can communicate with us in the Telegram group, or reach out to us via email. There's the email in the channel description as well. But this is a very, very interesting thing, and it could all be nonsense. But the fact that they've got such accurate information on global armaments really makes you think that there's something. It's not just it's not just some trick that somebody's running on all of us.
And maybe the people that have been producing all the zombie movies and zombie series, maybe they have an inside track, and we weren't taking them seriously all this time.
Exactly. So let us know what you know.
Yeah, I love it when the people involved in this have a sense of humor. Black, but still a sense of humor.
Yeah. Dark humor still can be funny until you actually start seeing a zombie apocalypse take place around you. Then you start to a little less funny. But yeah. So viewers, let us know, please, if you have any information on this, and Doug and I will keep investigating. Among the friends that we have that might have some information on it, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much, Doug, and we'll leave it at that. And we'll be back tomorrow.
Thanks, Matt. Hasta mañana.